that are going to be streaming in, but we will keep it going. My name is Catherine Dougal, and I am the Development and Engagement Specialist here at Bridge, Michigan. Today, we are discussing Michigan's redistricting process. This event is a part of Bridge's monthly lunch break series where we discuss policy issues relevant to Michigan residents. If you aren't familiar with Bridge, Michigan, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan, statewide news organization, and you can read our coverage every day for free online at bridgemi.com. I want to thank our Bridge members who are here with us today and who help support our work. If you are not already a member and would like to become one, you can do so anytime on our website, and our membership director, Amber DeLint, who you just heard from, is going to drop a link into the chat. The schedule for today's discussion is that we will begin a conversation between Bridge, Michigan Capitol reporter Sergio Martinez Beltran and our special guest, Edward Woods and Mariana Martinez. We will then open the discussion to reader questions for our panelists. Throughout the discussion, you can enter your questions into the chat at any time. If you are calling in today, you can email your questions to us at membership@bridgemi.com. Just so you know, we are recording this discussion and we'll be posting the recording in Bridge, Michigan this week. Now, to introduce our special guests. First, we have Mariana Martinez. Mariana joined the Michigan Nonprofit Association in November of 2020 as the new Director of Civic Engagement Initiatives, where she leads statewide initiatives such as the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission Initiative. Prior to joining MNA, Mariana served the office of Detroit City Council member Raquel Castañeda Lopez for 4 years as the Chief of Staff, where she worked to advance community advocacy and inclusive policy. In that role, Mariana directed the Immigration Task Force, ITF, an initiative that works to advance welcoming policies and highlights Detroit as a welcoming, inclusive, and global city. Thanks to the work of the ITF, Detroit ranked 8th most welcoming city in the US in 2020 by the New American Economy. Before joining Detroit City Council, Mariana worked at the Kresge Foundation as the assistant to the Vice President, Chief Program and Strategy Officer, and at Global Ties Detroit as Program Director. Mariana moved to Detroit from Paris, where she co-managed 2 properties as Deputy Director for IGESA, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to serving France's Ministry of Defense. Mariana currently serves as a board member for the executive team at Global Ties Detroit and is the co-chair of the Alumni Council for Cultural Vistas. Mariana holds a master's degree in public administration and nonprofit management from Oakland University and a bachelor's degree in psychology from Western Connecticut State University. We are also joined today by Edward Woods III. As the Communications and Outreach Director for the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, Edward leads the awareness and engagement efforts as it relates to redistricting for the commission. In this role, Edward is responsible for many things, but specifically creating and executing a multimedia and inclusive public awareness campaign about this redistricting process, collaborating with statewide organizations and community groups to engage all communities of interest in the redistricting process, coordinating and responding to media inquiries and participating in events like this. And as a lifelong Michigander, Edward has extensive experience working for governments and nonprofits in senior leadership, communications, and professional development positions. As a 2-time elected nonpartisan official and advocate, Edward enjoys this unique opportunity to explain Michigan's new redistricting process. I'm now going to pass it over to my colleague Sergio, who will kick off our discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Catherine, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great seeing some live faces. I see some people are outdoors, so it's very exciting. Great patios. I love them. My name is Sergio Martinez Beltran, and I'm excited to talk a little bit more about the redistricting process that's happening here in Michigan, which is a new thing for us, the way we're doing it this year. And the goal with this lunch break is to have a better understanding of where we are now with the process. But before we answer that question, we have to go back to the beginning. And I want to start with you, Edward. Can you briefly remind readers how we got here? Why are we going through this redistricting process?
First off, thank you so much, Sergio, Catherine, and Amber, for having me at the lunch break. I mean, this is such a unique and wonderful opportunity to be here for the lunch break sponsored by the Bridge Club. It's good to see 71 participants I see here as a part of this broadcast. And I'm really honored to be here and want to thank you again for having me. And it's also good to have a colleague and friend in Mariana here as well. As many of you know, in 2018, Prop 2, Michigan voters made an intentional and deliberate decision in filling out the ballot box saying yes to Prop 2. Whether they could not do that by voting a straight party ticket. They had to make an intentional and deliberate decision to go to that proposal 2 and circle yes. In fact, more than 61% of Michigan voters said, you know what? We want citizens who are like us, everyday citizens who are like us, to ensure that we have public participation in fair maps. And that's what led to the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. As many of you know, it was a blind draw of randomly selected people from across the state. The qualifications were 2. 1, they had to be a registered voter, and 2, they had to fill out the application. That was it. It was randomly selected by the Michigan Department of State. It was 13 people, 4 who affiliate as Democrats, 5 who affiliate as independents, and 4 who affiliate as Republicans. And that's what comprises the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. So in actuality, the reason why we're here today is because more than 61% of Michigan voters made an intentional and deliberate decision to create the MICRC.
We know that voter groups, but also nonprofit groups mobilized people back then to vote for this process and this proposition. I wanted to ask you, Mariana, how is the Michigan Nonprofit Association participating in this process, and what was their involvement back then?
Yes, thank you, Sergio, and thank you so much for having me here, Catherine, Amber, for organizing this, and always a pleasure. Back to you, Edward, to be to speak to you about something such important next to someone who's an amazing colleague and definitely has done a great job at communicating what is the commission doing. So very happy to be here. For those of you who don't know who MNA are, I just wanted to mention that a little bit quicker. MNA is a statewide membership organization dedicated to serving the diverse nonprofit sector through advocacy, training, and resources. And we are involved in the redistricting initiative because it's extremely important. It's a unique opportunity that happens only 10 years. And the way we're doing it is we built a cohort of 20 nonprofit organizations that we're providing resources such as mini grants, technical support, communication toolkits, translations, et cetera, whatever they need, so that they themselves can provide those resources to the communities at large in Michigan. We are working in 3 cities. Unfortunately, we don't have unlimited resources. We continue to fundraise, but because of those resources, we're able to focus only on 3 cities, which is Detroit, Flint, and Grand Rapids. And these organizations, from the lens of ensuring that our communities of color specifically, who have been left out of processes like these, get to participate, get to not only learn about what redistricting is, but participate in the process. That's really our North Star. So these organizations, or this nonprofit, 20 nonprofit organizations, cohort of 20 nonprofit organizations, represent populations like the African American, Hispanic and Latino, Arab American, Asian American and Pacific Islanders, Bangla, Caribbean, African, but also LGBT communities, as well as our disabilities, people with disabilities, which we know our communities are often left out of. So our purpose is really to ensure that they receive the resources, the information, so that they ultimately participate in such a crucial time in Michigan, which is drawing lines that will be drawn for the next 10 years. So.
We know that you've been working with the Hispanic Center in Grand Rapids, in the Grand Rapids area, and just an example of what they've been doing. Thanks to M&A, they've been able to translate some of the materials, some of the redistricting materials to Spanish. And actually, the Hispanic group there has been going to clinics and vaccine clinics and have been handing out those documents and those information sheets so people can participate and be engaged. And we know that also the commission has been translating some of the documents and also has interpreters while they're doing their hearings to make sure that more people can participate, and that language is not a barrier. That's something that Edward has said in the past. Edward, I want to ask you, if you can explain where we are in the redistricting process right now in terms of hearings, and can you also share the commission's role in facilitating this process?
Sure, thank you so much. Before the commission can draw any lines, whether it's the Michigan House, Michigan Senate, or the congressional districts, they have to hold a minimum per the Constitution of 10 public hearings. Being the overachievers as they are, as our executive director, Sue Hammersmith, likes to say, they elected to have 16 public hearings. So right now we are on a listening tour across the state of Michigan to get feedback about district lines. So not only are we informing and making people aware of the new redistricting process, because remember, this is the first time this is happening in the history of Michigan. I mean, this is the first time. And not only is it exciting, it's the first time, with regards to that, it's also such a high priority on public engagement. We want to hear from everyone, from every nook and cranny of part of the state. We want to hear from them. And so we have already conducted 3 of our public hearings. We started off in Jackson. From Jackson, we went to Kalamazoo. This past Tuesday, we're in Marquette. Tonight, we'll be in Gaylord. Next week, we're in Midland and in Lansing. The week after that, we're in Flint and in Pontiac. Flint and Dearborn. The week after that, we're in Novi and Pontiac. Then we're in Detroit on the 15th and the 17th. We're in Port Huron on the 22nd. We're in Warren, Michigan on the 24th. June 29th, we're in Muskegon, and July 1st, we're in Grand Rapids. So we have really tried to cover the entire state so people can come together and learn more about the process, understand the commission's role as it relates to Michigan's new redistricting process, and then provide feedback. You can provide feedback at our public hearings. You can provide feedback through the public comment portal, which is located at michigan.gov/MICRC. And you can also use that public comment portal, not just to provide public comments, but also to draw maps for the congressional, the Senate, and the House districts. And let me be, as well as communities of interest. So let me be very, very clear when it comes to these maps. You don't have to do it for the entire state, but you're welcome to. If you would like to do the 13 congressional districts, you can. The 110 House districts, you can. And the 38 Senate districts, you can. Or just a community of interest. And as you know, many of you may know, the community of interest, according to the Constitution, are communities that share historical or cultural characteristics or economic interests. They do not include political parties. I want to be very, very clear. It's taken directly from the Constitution. They do not include political parties. So if you're aware of a community of interest, whether it's an art district, education, different types of communities, you can draw those communities of interest and submit it to the commission for its consideration. In addition, you could draw the lines, whether it's your house district line, your Senate district lines, or your congressional district. And it gives you those opportunities to do that online and submit it to the commission. And the reason why that's so important is we're trying to get 10,000 distinct public comments, whether it's maps or comments from the state of Michigan, from Michigan residents. We want to hear from you. I mean, we're advertising, we're promoting it. Venues such as the lunch break sponsored by Bridge Michigan is so helpful. And to have you here, and I see you taking notes, and I see the engagement, which I'm so excited about. We want you to amplify that message in your sphere of influence to say, hey, this is important. Your voices are going to be heard. People that are making these decisions are everyday citizens, just like you and me. Before they can draw any lines, they want to hear from you. Take advantage of this opportunity and share with us. And in our listening, we heard about the concerns from the Jackson area. We heard about the concerns from the Kalamazoo area. We heard about the concerns from Marquette. And those are the things that are important, so that when the commission starts to draw maps and starts to have its deliberations, which all of you know take place in an open and transparent manner, because everything is live streamed. There's no backdoor deals or anything like that going on. If you want to see the work of the commission from the inception to the present, it's all available online. All of it's available online. I mean, this is a true, transparent process of what high school civics is all about. You know how we say government's for the people, by the people? Here's your example. And then the good thing is we have the press. And Sergio's an expert, I gotta give him credit. Sergio's a great reporter that is holding us accountable for our core value of transparency. And we like that. This is what this is all about. This is what government should be about. We should represent you, the people. And this is such a wonderful opportunity to do it. And I want to thank you for listening and taking the notes so that you can share this in your sphere of influence in helping us reach our goal of 10,000 distinct public comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. And I think it's important to know too that, I mean, this process is so different from what we've had in the past. I mean, since 1990, the party in power at the Michigan legislature here in Lansing was the one in charge of drawing the political districts. And we know that has led to some of the most gerrymandered districts in the nation. So the goal with this commission, and when voters went to the election in 2018, it was to change that. And we know that the commission has been focusing on hearing from people. As a reporter, we're going to be paying attention to see if in fact they are taking the input from the people when they draw the maps. And Mariana, I wanted to ask you, because there's such a focus on people, can you tell us a little bit more about how Michigan residents can take part in this redistricting planning process?
Absolutely. And thank you, Edward. I love how enthusiastic you're of us sending this message. That really does reflect on the hard work that you guys are doing. Well, at the core of our democracy is participation, right? So I think this is a crucial time to do so. Right now, the commission is out there listening. That's all they're doing. They're holding public hearings. Right now, no maps have been drawn. So it's an opportunity for people to say what's important in their community. So community is of interest. You're going to hear this term a lot. Is the third most important criteria that they have to follow. It's a little vague. What does that mean? They're going to have a tough job, I will say, in defining and hearing and figuring out what that is. But essentially, some of the questions that can help that is there a belonging in my community? What common beliefs and values exist in my community? You and I, all of us are part of a community of interest. There's something in our community that puts us together. And so it's important to participate. They're hearing us now. Then they're going to draw the maps. That's their job. And then they're going to present the maps, and they will hold more public hearings. So those are crucial times to let them know what you think about your community, what's important, what they should be considering for your communities, so that they have the best knowledge and information to draw the maps. There are many different ways to participate, and they're making it very clear. They just actually published the public comment tool where you can submit written materials, a map, anything about your community of interest. You can show up in person at a public hearing. They've done an amazing job. We have to give credit where credit is due. They've done an amazing job at making sure that the public hearings are available if you show up in person, but also very well tech driven if you're for those who want to participate virtually. So of course there are rules, etc. You have to sign up at a certain time. You have to register. So but you can show up to provide public comment. If you're camera shy or don't want to do that, no worries. You can send your feedback via their public tool where you go to their website. And all of these platforms are available for you. As it relates to the work that we're leading, you can always contact our cohort members, one of our cohort members, which is in our website, www.mnaonline.org/ICRC. There's a lot of resources there translated. As Sergio mentioned, for us, it was really important to translate, to make these things available so that if you want to share the information or learn more about it, tons of resources are there so that you can learn more about the process and how to get engaged. But those are essentially, there are many ways to do it. show up in person, send your thoughts via the public comment tool, draw a map. You don't have to, there are a lot of platforms that you can use, like Representable, where you can tell that, you can express what communities of interest, what's important in your community. There's Redistricting, which is a free online software tool that you can use to draw maps. And all of that, the commission is receiving to then, again, gather all that input and make the best in drawing lines and drawing maps. So those are the best opportunities. And again, there are many ways to participate. You can also share, right? Share information. Redistricting right now is, we have such a tight timeline. It happens every 10 years and we have so little time to get engaged, but know the consequences and the ramifications of not getting involved can be felt for the next decade. So make sure that you participate and provide and say what's important for you and your community.
Thank you, Mariana. And we know with the pandemic, a lot of people have been impacted by this. And one of the things and the services that have been impacted as well has been the census. Edward, we've heard more about the congressional redistricting process being impacted by the census delays. What are the delays impacting at the state district level, and what is the commission trying to do to minimize those impacts?
Well, we're trying to seek relief, and we filed a petition with the Michigan Supreme Court, and we're waiting to hear back from that. But in the meantime, the commission is, as you know, is busy. While we're waiting for the reply to see which way that it goes, our first priority is to hear from Michigan residents. And that's really the purpose of the public hearing. We're not trying to speculate and identify what's going to happen because, to be honest with you, we really don't know. If we have to follow the Constitution, then we'll be making sure that we have it done by November 1. If they grant us relief, then we'll have it done depending on the guidelines that they give us back to us. But right now, our real focus is just hearing from Michigan residents, following the Constitution and doing these public hearings. So really can't speculate what the court is going to do. Everyone knows that the delay in the census, let's be very clear and transparent, is a pandemic. Let's not mix, let's not, and it's a worldwide pandemic that impacted, where people have died. So this is not something that is a blip in the road or a bump on the log. This was unpredicted. This is something unprecedented. And so, the commission wants to ensure that we do things right and that we have time to do things right. So, and that's why we filed the petition. We wanted to be accurate and also have times to do things right. And, we're doing this on behalf of the residents, more than 61% of the voters. No one else has exclusive authority to draw maps in the MICRC. No one else has that authority. And we want to make sure that we're accurate in doing it. And we want to make sure that we don't rush ourselves, but have time to do it. And that was the reason for why we submitted the petition for relief. And we're waiting back to hear from the courts. But in the meantime, we are committed to hearing from Michigan residents. As I stated earlier, we're working with statewide organizations all across the state who have local affiliates or members all across the state in terms of getting people to submit comments either in person or remotely, whether that's virtual during our public hearings or by telephone. Because we're also concerned about the digital divide and making sure voices are heard. Just because you don't have internet access doesn't mean your voice shouldn't be heard. And we're doing that. You mentioned earlier, Sergio, about accommodations. All of our meetings, we have sign interpreters there. We have Arabic and Spanish translation. If you do not speak Arabic or Spanish and you have a different language that you speak, we can arrange for translators to be present. And if you want to ask questions to the commission, we can make that happen as well. If you have disabilities and need reasonable accommodations, you submit that and we can take care of that as well. We're adamant about listening, in terms of doing our job right now from Michigan residents and making sure that we've eliminated any and all barriers to prevent anyone from participating in this process.
Edward, and I want to go back to something you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, which was, you're asking for relief. And I think that is tied to time here. Like, can you share a little bit about the timetable for this process? When should people expect the districts to be drawn and all of that?
Well, and once again, it depends on whether or not we get relief. The Constitution, as we all know, says that the maps are due November 1st. But because of the census delay, we also know that we're not going to have the final census numbers until September 30th. So it would be hard to provide a 45-day time limit, between drawing the maps, then providing a 45-day period, because we're doing a second round of public hearings. And that requires 5, but the commission is going to do 8. And we want to get public feedback on those maps that we're proposing to be adopted from the public. If we don't have the census information, Sergio, until September 30th, then we got to create maps based on that census information. And then after we create the maps, we got to vote the maps. And then after we vote the maps, then we have 45 days to do a public tour again to get feedback on those maps and then make a decision. And so that's why it's difficult to meet that November 1 deadline when we will not have the final census data until September 30th.
If I can say something as it relates to the deadline for census, I would say that if anything is an opportunity, we don't know, right? That's going to change and that's going to delay the process for sure, or that's what we're looking to get that relief. But as it relates to hearing, right, it gives us time. For us, we shouldn't worry too much about that. It's because it's an opportunity for more participation to hear, for us to say, right, for our communities to say what's important. And so that I want to make sure that we emphasize enough. It's certainly a concern or something that the commission, but it's kind of their job in a way. For us, it's our job as citizens of Michigan is to give our input in that, if anything, gives us a little bit more time.
Thank you, Mariana. And I want to ask you too about equitable districts. I mean, we've talked about this in the past. That's the reason why we're in the M&A is making sure that nonprofits and that those diverse nonprofits are participating in the process, and that you're translating material so everyone is involved. Can you tell us more about your role in creating equitable districts? And also, I guess the question is like, what would be an equitable district in your mind and in M&A's mind?
Thank you, Sergio. That's a great question. From the perspective of M&A, and really at the core, like I mentioned, of our democracy is participation. We want people to participate, to be aware of what redistricting is. This is a new process for all of us, let alone for communities who have been left out, and they happen to be communities of color, immigrant communities, low-income populations. They have been left out of decisions. They don't really know what is this and how does that affect me? So education is definitely the first step. And then our North Star, like I mentioned, is participation too. Okay, how do I pass from just letting you know about redistricting to how do I participate? And so what is an equitable for us? The vision is that everyone participates. I know that's a big effort and that's a big definitely endeavor. And we're not doing it alone. We're working definitely with other organizations that are working statewide that have similar concern, which is to make sure that everyone participates, not just our usual suspects, right? Or not just those who are very familiar with the system. It's about everybody. And so what does equity mean for us is definitely making sure that everyone knows about it and participates. And that is definitely a difficult task, because like I mentioned, redistricting doesn't resonate in the same way that census does. We have to explain, and then make it relevant to certain people. There are, for certain communities, there's the mistrust about government, anything that government happens. So separating the redistricting process to the political or how it has been politicized, it's very difficult sometimes. And so the education part to the participation part it's difficult, it's a challenge. And so for us is making sure that we're putting everything or as much information out there. We have videos that we provided, 30-second videos explaining visually what redistricting is, which is no easy task for sure. Translated it, created materials that are ADA with accessibility to ADA materials, so that we're as inclusive as possible. So for us, as many voices and as much participation is what we're aiming, because truly the more voices, the more inclusivity we have, the more our beautiful communities are going to be reflected, the more the commission is going to learn about the issues that are happening in different communities. Think of Detroit, right? Detroit has some of the most polluted zip codes in the United States. The levels of asthma are extremely high. So they need to know, our communities need to get together and express what these issues are, so that they can be well represented. And so in some very summarized way is to increase participation. That will reflect who we truly are in the state of Michigan.
And I want to ask a question about, this whole idea of making districts competitive, because we know we've heard about this in the past, Edward, and about how many people have talked about, when you draw a new district, you have to make sure that it's a competitive one. So my question is, how much emphasis will the commission place on making districts competitive, especially to limit the amount of extremism in politics? You're muted, Edward.
A story of my life. Some people probably want to mute me. Sorry about that. I just like to make sure. We need to be real clear that the commission has 7 redistricting criteria in ranked order that's in the Constitution. So I think people just really need to know. I mean, it's an open book. So everybody knows what we need to be doing. We have 7 criteria, and I'll list it for you. 1, equal population and following the Voting Rights Act and applicable federal state laws. And by equal population, what we're talking about is, we're losing a congressional seat. So they're predicting about 770,000 people in each congressional district. We'll get that final count when we get the census data in terms of what it's based on, but it's about 770,000 people. So the first criteria, whether it's a Michigan congressional, whether it's a Michigan Senate, whether it's a Michigan House, it has to have equal population, and then whatever the guidelines may be, according to federal law. The second in ranked criteria is it has to be geographically contiguous. It has to be geographically contiguous. And that's something that is important. The third criteria, and we've talked about this already, is the communities of interest. Michigan is the only state in the country that has communities of interest ranked so high. So you can't compare Michigan to other states when it comes to our criteria, because this is something that's unique to us. Once again, a community of interest is not, I repeat, is not a political party. Number 4, no disproportionate advantage to any political party. Number 5, no favor or disfavor to an incumbent elected official or a candidate. Number 6, reflect consideration of county, city, and township boundaries. And then number 7, be reasonably compact. Be reasonably compact. So where you're headed at in terms of the disproportionate advantage, Sergio, would be the 4th criteria in the redistricting criteria that the commission has to consider.
Wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. And I think we're ready to get to some of the reader submitted questions here. And I'm going to go with the first one here, which is, has there been an effort to reach out to the Native American communities?
Absolutely. We have reached out to 2 groups in particular, the Intertribal Council of Michigan, as well as the United Tribal Council. I just did a presentation last month to the council that was done through the state, that's done by the state in terms of a presentation. And we just did some advertising in the newsletter through New Michigan Media in terms of reaching out as well. And it's an ongoing thing. If anyone has some suggestions or names that we can assist, that can assist us in getting the word out, that would be great. Frank has been an excellent person to work with the Tribal Council in terms of doing that. And we're trying to strengthen our relationship with the Intertribal Council. And we're just making sure that people understand that this commission, just like the census, this is not political in nature. This is about who represents you and why you need to get involved. And so we're just trying to share that. This is not a public policy position or anything like that that people might want to engage in terms of whether or not they want to support the commission. This is not a public policy. This is law. You know, you want to make sure people know this is law, and you have an opportunity, you know, to participate in this process. And I think Mariana, you know, alluded to that earlier. This is not, well, what can we take a public policy position on the MICRC? No, the MICRC is law. They have exclusive authority as it relates to redistricting for the congressional, for the Michigan House and the Michigan Senate. You want to be engaged in this process. You want to raise your voice to these 13 commissioners. So as they deliberate in an open and transparent process, you can hear whether or not the feedback that you provided was actually considered. And that's what's so unique and so wonderful about this process. No one else has this exclusive authority than the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. This is the body that you want to communicate and ensure that your voice is heard as it relates to redistricting. And so we've not, and not just, you mentioned the Native Americans, we're trying to reach out to anybody and everybody. And if people are not hearing about it that are Native Americans, call me, tell me, so that we can make sure that you're getting the word out. You know, normally we try to work with councils and groups and hope that message filters down. If it's not filtering down, let me know. We want to make sure that it is filtering down, and we're holding ourselves accountable, not our partners accountable, ourselves accountable in terms of making sure that the word gets out. And we understand that that's our responsibility. We are appreciative of our partners and our collaborators that are working with us. But if they're not doing it, or you hear they're not doing it, let me know so that we can get the word out to any and all communities to ensure that they're aware of Michigan's new redistricting process.
And Sergio, can if I can add to that, there are definitely a lot of organizations that are working statewide. It is a challenge. This is the first time that we've done it, and we have a big task ahead of us. The commission has a hard time, a hard job. I will wholeheartedly admit we all do, right? Because we're trying to reach. But there are organizations like Michigan Voices, Voters Not Politicians, League of Women Voters, who are statewide trying to reach all communities. I would like to emphasize that it is our responsibility. It's all of our responsibility, right? It's a responsibility of the commission. It's a responsibility of media. It's a responsibility of us as citizens to share. If I had access to this knowledge, it is my responsibility to share it. I cannot emphasize that enough. We can't let, yes, the commission that's their job, and they have to do everything they can with the resources they have to make sure that everybody knows about the process and participates ultimately. But it is our responsibility. This is we all voted for this. We wanted this. We want to see fair maps being drawn. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we pass the word, that if I have a connection with a community, that, that you do it, that you help us pass the word, raise awareness, and encourage people to participate. So it's our job. It's all of our jobs.
Mariana, we have another question that talks about communities. I mean, you work with communities all the time. The person asks, I'm curious how creating communities is a good idea. I would think that people in common communities would also have common voting practices. Isn't that how gerrymandering works, packing everyone of a certain community together?
Well, gerrymandering, I mean, yes and no, right? I think there's always something that unites us in our community, whether it is a share, a lake, whether it is an issue, whether it is right? I think that is very different. Defining what our community of interest is very different from drawing lines that benefit a certain party. I think that's two distinct things. And so for us in defining what issue or what unite you to your community is what we're looking for. And so that is very far from saying, packing, from actually drawing the lines, packing or cracking, as you've heard those terms, that then becomes a problem that we've faced in the past. And so defining what a community of interest or what's important and what unites a community, what issue you share, that happens all over all over the world, all over the United States, right? Like we all have something in common, and that's what the commission is looking for to learn, so that communities either stay together or don't get split apart, right? Like say, for example, the Bangla community in Detroit, they the benefit right now that they are together in all different districts, right? In all Senate, Congress, and in states. So I think it's that is the goal, right? To tell the commission, we, for example, in that community, we want to stay together. We want to stay the way we are. Don't separate us because we have shared interests. And then, to the opposite of that is to make sure that they're not separating or you're not cutting us, or you're not, you make sure that our community is unified, that it was split between, before there was a line that divided our community. So we want to tell the commission about this, the lake, for example, issues around the lake or pollution, like I mentioned. We need to stay together so that the person who represents us can then best represent us, address these, these issues in the future through policies, through money that will be appropriated, et cetera. So it's very, very different and distinct. And I want to make sure that that's clear. How we define communities of interest to then drawing lines that conveniently benefit one party over another are, definitely two different things.
And I think one of the biggest challenges that the commission, or one of the many challenges the commission is facing, is the fact that we know that the state is losing a congressional seat. So then they'll have to deal with the loss of one congressional seat, and we still don't know which seat that would be. But Edward, what impact will redistricting have on the 22 elections in Michigan?
I have no idea.
You have to give me something here.
I don't have to say I have literally no idea, because you're assuming I know where the lines are going to be drawn, and I don't. So, I have no idea. I mean, I just hope people will participate in the redistricting process so that who represents them in Lansing or DC, is how can I say, is by participating in the process, they can ensure that their community of interest is represented in Lansing and district by how the lines are drawn. But I have no crystal ball about what's going to happen in 2022 or what's happening with the map. So sorry, I can't give you anything, but what I can't give you is the truth as I know it today, in an open, transparent, and public matter to all 69 participants who are listening to us now and whoever listens to the recording.
So I have to push you on this.
Please push me.
Because I'm wondering, do you have, I guess the commission has an idea if like the new maps, whenever that happens, if they're gonna for sure be used for the 22 election?
Well, that's the requirement by the law, is to use the maps approved by the commission. I mean, if that's what you're talking about, yes. But as you know, the maps haven't been drawn or drafted because we have to do the public hearing first. And that's what we're in the process of doing now. So yes, the goal is to make sure that the commission approved maps are used in time for the 2022 election. That is, I can say that would be correct.
Perfect. We have another question from the public here. They want to know a little bit about the structure of the public listening meetings, how much of the conversation is led by the commission and how much by the members of the public.
Sure. We usually have 15 minutes where we do, call the meeting to order. We do welcome and introductions, provide some overview, and then we talk about the purpose of the public hearings, why we're here. All of that takes about 15 minutes. And then the rest of the 2 hours and 45 minutes have been public comments, whether in person or virtual. In Jackson and Kalamazoo, we averaged about 70 live public comments where people were actually in person. And we had about 5 to 7 remote comments, whether virtual or phone. This past Tuesday in Marquette, we had about 30 public comments in person, and we had about 2 to 5, no more than 5 that were done remotely. And so that's how we've gone so far. But the bulk of the time is literally spent on hearing from the public. And the reason why we have our information, because some people may not have heard about the commission. And so one of our jobs, as you know, in our communication plan is to increase awareness so that we can get engagement or foster engagement. So that 15 minutes is really an awareness of the commission and its work. And then the 2 hours and 45 minutes is an engagement in terms of soliciting public feedback, which is the third reason behind why we're doing the public hearing tours in the first place.
And Mariana, I wanted to ask you, can you share a little bit with the group what's been the biggest challenge that M&A or other nonprofits have faced in terms of engaging communities of color or marginalized communities that maybe have not been included in the past?
Yes, thank you. Before I answer your question, I think it's important to say that for us at M&A, something that was very important to do as we were providing these resources, notably the mini grants, was to allow nonprofit organizations to give them the liberty to choose what they needed to do or how they wanted to civically engage with their communities, because they knew best, right? Oftentimes money comes with, and we know that, or those who are philanthropy or have received money at any point, there's restrictions around like what you should do with your money. And so for us, it was like very important to, here you have these resources, figure out different messaging, right? Crafting different messages they may resonate, right? What I tell the Hispanic and Latino community might not resonate or will not resonate necessarily with the Arab American community, et cetera. So for us, it was very important to give that liberty to allow them to figure out how would you like and how can we support you, right? Through the translation. So of course, it's a challenge because of the reason, as I mentioned earlier, these are populations who are generally left out, generally not engaged. There are a lot of, right, like voting, there's, right, like not enough engagement, so that they're not very much engaged. They don't believe in the system. They don't trust the government. I mean, there are many things that we can go into, that there are challenges and barriers for us to get them to say, let me just hear about redistricting. And so raising awareness for sure, messaging, and then ensuring, and then having enough resources to reach all of these communities. That's a humongous challenge, but working with community, and that's why it's important for us to work in the community, to work even with organizations that are not necessarily your usual suspects, right? Smaller organizations that are on the ground, rolling their sleeves, that really know what the issues are in their community, was really important for us. And so will we solve the problem? Certainly not. And this is why I cannot emphasize, this is everybody's responsibility to the extent that we all can participate. And we're not working in silos, to make sure that we other organizations working statewide, that we know what each other is doing, so that we're not duplicating efforts. So for us, that was also being strategic around how we deploy these resources, and how do we provide, what kind of support do we provide these organizations to best put the information out there and have the most outreach possible. So for sure, education, I see it as two sides, right? Education and then participation. And there's a big gap between two. To even get to education, it's going to be hard, right? Your average person, there was a survey that the commission sent, and we learned that not a lot of people, and even voters who are generally engaged in the process of, of voting, or just know about things happening, don't really know about redistricting. So you can imagine our communities who have been left out. So it's definitely a big challenge, but we're doing our best with the resources that we have, but most importantly with the collaboration of our nonprofits who are on the ground. We cannot pretend to say we know everything and we know and we're everywhere. That's not the case that anybody can say. And so that's why, not working in silos, make sure the education is there, the pieces of education are there, and collaborate. It's our responsibility.
And Mariana, we have a question from a member of the public here, which I'm also curious to know. The question is, how did the Michigan Nonprofit Association decide which cities M&A would be focusing their redistricting work in?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. So it was definitely hard to have to narrow it down, because we wanted, if we had more resources, we would have done something larger. But in this case, we wanted to make sure we had to be laser focused and decide what cities. And so Detroit, Flint, and Grand Rapids have the highest population, or high number of population. And they are in the communities that we're trying to reach. That's where they are. That's where most of them are. That's the laser focus that we had to be of the lens that we were looking at this. Of course, if more resources come, we will certainly look at expanding, because I think that's during our RFP process, when people were submitting the applications, we saw a tremendous amount of interest from all over the state. So we felt really bad not being able to focus, but that's the reason. So we had to be focused mainly because of resources and prioritization, I guess you can say.
And Sergio, just to be clear, the MICRC has our target is the whole entire state of Michigan. So I don't want anyone to think that we're limited to different cities, because that would be incorrect. And so just in case, I don't want anyone to imply it or suggest it, none of that at all. Just want to share with you that our focus will continue to be the entire state of Michigan. And if there's anyone anywhere that's having challenges with getting the information or what have you, we have a PO box in terms of mail, internet, and phone number. Please contact us. Our phone number is 1-833-YOU-DRAW, YOU-DRAW, YOU-DRAW. We have a PO box 30318 for Lansing, Michigan 48909. You can do that. And then you can also email us as well. So we have access that you can kind of connect with us, regardless of your internet capabilities or not, to get in touch with us. So that's just something that's important. And I'm very grateful for all of our statewide organizational partners. There's tons and tons of organizational partners. And like Mariana said, Michigan Nonprofit Association is doing what they can as relate to the resources that they have available. And some of the other ones are doing the same as well. And anyone can be a part of our statewide organization partners. We keep telling people we're always adding to the list. The only requirement is you have to be a statewide organization with local affiliates or members across the state of Michigan. And so what they're doing, like League of Women Voters is one of our partners, and they're helping us with volunteers, with regards to volunteers. And so we're just and the reason why we have volunteers helping us at our different meetings, because they're their neighbors. And we want people to come to the meetings, see their neighbors, have a community feel aspect to foster an environment that's conducive for people to provide public comment. I mean, that is something that is so, so, so important to us. Sergio, I saw a question in the chat that talked about the commission and how they're getting along. And I kind of wanted to respond to that because
just because we're approaching the end of the program, but yes, because that's important. And they asked if you were surprised that they were not bickering.
That was the question. And I want people to know our mission, the commission's mission, is to lead Michigan's redistricting process to assure Michigan's congressional, state Senate, and state House district lines are drawn fairly in a citizen-led, transparent process meeting constitutional mandates. And when you're focused on the mission, what a novel idea. You can get things done. Nobody's worried about getting reelected. Nobody's worried about raising money. Nobody's worried about getting a leadership position. Nobody's worried about getting their bill co-signed. Nobody's worried about none of that stuff. They have one mission. And when you can focus on the mission and know that the responsibility that you have is that people are not looking for us to bicker and engage into partisan disputes. They just want us to have a citizen-led process that provides feedback from all the public, regardless of where they live, color, what have you. They want feedback, provides public feedback in drawing fair maps. And when you're focused on the mission, great things can happen. And I think as a result of this opportunity that you've given us today and the people that are on this line, we can get the public feedback we need to ensure that we have fair maps for the great state of Michigan. And Sergio, and Catherine and Amber, and also to my colleague, Mariana, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, Edward, and thank you, Mariana. I think before we close, I think it's important to note that even though there's a lot of agreement about the commission, it's important to mention that there are groups that have opposed the creation of the commission and also have opposed the work of the commission. So I think it's important to know that as well. Edward.
Excuse me, what do you mean by that? There are groups that are what?
Well, we know there are groups that try to sue the state to not create the commission, and so they have opposed it in the past.
Edward, but can we encourage them, Sergio, before you leave, to push back? Even the groups that oppose us, we want to hear from them because they are citizens of Michigan. And let's be clear, the Constitution speaks clearly. whether they support the commission or not. They are residents of this state, and they have a right to provide public comments, to draw maps that are for the Michigan Congressional, Michigan State House, and Michigan Senate, or a community of interest. They have that right to do so. So we're not concerned about who opposes us or who supports us, because we have a constitutional mandate from more than 61% of Michigan voters. We're concerned about public feedback and drawing fair maps that we were constitutionally mandated to do as a result of the proposal that passed in 2018 Prop 2. That is our focus. So tell them, Sergio, tell them for us. We're not going to get engaged in bickering, but we are going to solicit their feedback to draw fair maps as residents of this great state of Michigan.
And Sergio, can I just say really quickly, thank you, Edward. I love your emphasis on those things. I did want to encourage people to visit our website because there's a lot of resources there. So while we are not able to be everywhere in Michigan, the resources can be accessible to anyone. And also you can sign up to our newsletters to receive our newsletters, from be in the know what's happening, any important decisions, we send updates. So I put that on the chat. So if you want to stay connected, you most certainly will, or can rather.
Thank you so much, Mariana, and thank you so much, Edward. All right, whoever's gonna close. I also appreciate everyone for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sergio. Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Mariana, for sharing your expertise today. I think this was a great event. I know I learned a lot. I was very curious about where we were in this process, and I feel very illuminated, as I think many of you do as well, because you shared that in the comments. Want to thank all of our Bridge readers for participating today. A special thank you to our members, who are your support of events, make events just like this one possible. So thank you so much to all of you for participating. A recording of this event will be found tomorrow in Bridge. So if you want to watch again, or if you know that your friends could benefit from learning more about how they can get involved in the process, you'll find it tomorrow at bridgemi.com. You can share it on your social media or send it to whomever you think could use this information, which I think is our entire state. Again, I want to thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll talk to you at next month's lunch break. Take care. Bye-bye.